Yeah, everyone, and welcome back to the Generation Gap.
Yeah.
This is the only lighthearted podcast starring two giggly girls gathering people from different generations to discuss some not so lighthearted topics. Today, we are actually not discussing a lighthearted topic at all.
Yeah, it's a very
Sensitive topic, yes, which is why all the jokes have been left aside. But I think this topic is one to be spoken about, especially considering that most of our audience come from the teenage age range. So it's very important for us to talk about this. So joining us on the panel today, we have two very knowledgeable people. Our first guest is father of two, CEO of the Britannia company. We have Mr. Annu Gupta. Yay.
Hello, nice to be here. Thank you, Ruhi.
Thank you for coming.
Our next guest is a graduate currently studying in the Simon Fraser University in Canada. Please welcome Ahilan Kumaresan.
Yay.
Thanks a lot.
Okay, so first up, I think we should explain what exactly suicide is. So, the definition is that suicide is when someone causes his or her own death on purpose. So, for the longest time, when I was, kind of younger, I used to think suicide is the easier way out for people. You should be able to face the situation and not just, commit suicide. But now that I give it a deeper thought as a more mature person, I feel like, some people, they may not have another choice but to give up their life. Yeah. And they're kind of compelled to take this big decision, right? So before we get to anything else, in segment one, we want to discuss what are some reasons that may compel one to take such a big decision of giving up their life. So what do you guys think?
Oh, I think, Rohit, this is a very important topic that we should discuss. Thank you for raising this. Every topic that plagues us is worth discussing, and we'll try this as well lighthearted. So first of all, I would like to say that my view, these are only my personal views. First of all, I would like to say that everyone has a choice. So there's nothing which is, so the only choice that we do not have is when we were born. That wasn't our choice. But I think after that, by and large, everything is our choice. So life does put sometimes, does seem to be to us, it feels that there is no choice and it feels like it's the end of the road. Frankly, there's no end of the road. The world is round. You keep going on and on and on and on that. There's nothing called end of the road for anything. As long as we are passionate about what we are doing, and as long as we do what we want to do and we enjoy it, and if we have that deeper understanding that enjoyment itself is our reward, then I don't think that much we will get bothered by what the world says or feels, because most of the time people think about these or get into these suicidal tendencies when they feel that they have failed, when they haven't been able to accomplish what the world and society has expected them to achieve. So they try to compare themselves to the standards that others have set, and sometimes they lead to such a situation out of guilt for doing something which they believe they should not have done. That can also lead to these kind of tendencies. The key here is that to err is human and to forgive is divine, right? So anybody and everybody will make mistakes. Anybody and everybody will not be perfect. As long as one is comfortable with this and enjoying what one is doing, I think rest, everything will fall in place. That's my own view. We should give it our best shot, but mentally I think we should take it easy. We should take it very easy. This is a fleeting world. This is, we're coming here, going out after a few years. It, we have to enjoy it, we have to love what we are doing, and we have to believe in what we are doing. That is my view, initial views. Over to you guys.
Yeah, it's actually very, like what you said is very correct. It's everything is a choice, but then again, like some people, they may feel compelled to do it because of the situations. So Nivi and I were researching, and it's very shocking. Like we found out that one person dies by suicide about every 11 minutes in the world. So it's astonishing how much it's taking place. But a lot of the cases are teenage suicide, and it's things like just a small change in one's life can cause them to like lead to such a decision. Like we found out that changes in families, changes in friendships, problems in school, anything like this can have a very different impact on one's mental state and mental health, and it can lead to such things. Another thing that we wanted to talk about is, the availability of the resources for such a thing. So, for example, in the US and stuff, it's more common to find a gun in every household. So, we found out again that guns are used in more than half of all youth suicides. So, just having, it can also be accidental at times. We feel like it's not correct for, okay, a gun may be kept for safety or something in the house, but the availability of a child having access to a gun, which may just fall out of somewhere in the house and they just get access to it, that's again very risky, because the availability of such things can also kind of encourage this action. Ahilan, what do you have to say?
Okay, first of all, we need to establish that suicide is wrong, right? We all have a uniform decision on that. Suicide is not acceptable, right? But then I loved how Mr. Annu Gupta said that suicide, is not the final track, right? It's definitely not is the final track. We have a lot of things going on even after that. And I love how he said if we experience life in a way that then we don't really need to go to such decisions. But I would actually differ from him in that point where as a teenage student, right, life, to be honest, is pretty dark. You have it's like a pressure cooker, right? You add and add and add responsibilities, and as you age, the responsibilities just get more and more, right? And suicide is, we don't, I mean, students, they don't think suicide is a solution, to be honest. They're not looking for a solution at this point. They want to end this pain, right? They're not looking for, they're not saying suicide will solve all these problems, no. But they're saying they can't handle it anymore, and they want to depart from this life. They want to detach from this existence. And I wouldn't say this is a very personal thing, because yeah, if this is a very psychological thing, right, this is something about how much a person can handle, then yeah, that shouldn't lead to such statistics where we have such huge number of suicides, right? And that too at a teenage level, right? That doesn't make sense. And these records, these numbers haven't been recorded ever in history, right? That means there's something wrong we're doing with our students, right? So I would actually say it's actually a society, right? And it's framework where it is framed in such a way that students aren't able to escape it, right? The more and more we get into society, right, the more and more we get into this education and stuff, yeah, society starts crushing you, and then students go into this point where like, okay, what now? What am I supposed to do? And at that point of loss, what are parents or what are families doing? They would add on to the pressure, right? I mean, that's what I experienced. Yeah. They would add on to your pressure, meaning like, suppose I get, really bad grades in my final exams, right? Society would be like, oh, bad grades, bad university, your life is spoiled, right? And what is family doing? Oh, bad grades. What are you supposed to do now? What are you gonna do? And they actually feel disappointed on you for having these grades, or anything, right? In a matter of fact, at least in Indian families, we have this thing like, yeah, a guy or a girl until 12, right? They're not supposed to have been in any relationships or anything like that, right? And the moment they find out you're in a relationship, boom, your mom will start suiciding, and because of that, you like, yeah, I can't even express who I am anymore, right? It's at that point we fall really low and we go like, why do I live when I can't be who I am, right? Why do I live when I can't be accepted for what I do? Okay, that pain of identity, like, who I am, that's what causes this. All right. Again, I'm not saying it's wrong, but what I'm saying is this is not happening just because of one student thinking or quitting up, right? This is because of the society's framework.
Yeah, that's very correct. And I know it's not easy. I mean, it's easier said than done, but I feel like just finding the joy in small things in life and looking at the positive side will like help. As you said, it is very difficult because everything around you is kind of just, getting you in that mindset. But then again, like it's like suicide isn't just the only way out. Like Uncle said, there's always another choice, and eventually, I feel like it is possible to overcome such scenarios.
Yeah, I think what Ahilan said about society pressure, I completely agree with that and identify with that. I myself have gone through all of that, and now I'm at a little bit on the other side, so to say, but still very much part of society, feeling the pressure day in and day out. So I think the biggest support system that we should all turn to is our families, and I think families, especially parents, they understand all this, but I think the communication is a bit weak, perhaps, between the kids and the parents. So I think the only way to curb this unhealthy society pressure is falling back on the family. This is what my view is.
So that's very true. That happens. That isn't actually a luxury to a few Indian students, right? To be able to do that. But I would actually like to talk about these two severe. Okay, I have been brought up with two major cases of suicides, right, in my life. At least that's in Tamil Nadu's life, right? There was this 1st September 2017, Anita's suicide, and there is the general farmer's suicide, right? And I actually relate with Anita's suicide. So what happened was, we all know the announcement of the NEET examination in India, right?
Yeah.
And in India, because of that, there were a lot of protests, especially from South India, because the framework of the examination was not equal for a South Indian curriculum student, right? We have state boards in India, and that's what, each state has its own curriculum, right? And this NEET examination was catered towards CBSE students, right? Now, about 90% of Tamil Nadu studies in state boards. The problem arises when you are supposed to give an examination which you are not, you've been never taught, right, in your entire life, okay? Now, again, why am I saying society plays a huge role? Is because what happened to Anita? Anita was a student. She scored one of the highest grades in her examination, in her school examination, and her own state board examination, right? But what happened was, when the rule came that you're supposed to give a NEET examination to become a doctor, right? What happened? She failed in it. Why? I mean, can we blame her? No. She studied. She knows her subject really well, but she still failed because that examination was not for her. Right? That examination was not framed in such format for her. Okay. So what happened? Anita was actually a student from the developing part of, like, India is already a developing country, and Anita was from the developing part of the community, right? So her goal was actually to become a doctor and treat a lot of people for free, right? And that was pretty genuine because she lost a mother, I think, at a young age, right? She studied in, if you watch her videos, she studied in this hut, right? And her last video was telling the, addressing the media that, I'm sorry, I couldn't do it, right? Like, I can't do it. I studied such well. My grades were were in the 90th percentile, right? That like the crisp of state boards. But I'm sorry. And when you look at that video and then you realize what happened the next day, that she suicided, you're like, that innocence, what happened to that, right? Uh, I mean, to be honest, my entire family cried. My dad doesn't cry at all, right? He's one of those Indian guys who doesn't cry at all. But when he saw this, he couldn't hold it. He was like, what is happening to my nation? What is happening to this society? Right? Why does this person have to go through this pain, right? Imagine how much she would have worked to get into this doctor position and to actually study well to in her own curriculum, right? Now, one day the government says, yeah, you can't, you if you want to become a doctor, you have to use another examination pattern, right? How would she feel, right? What would she have gone through, right? She was supposed to be the only breadwinner, right? Her dad was an auto driver, right? Pretty soon, her dad was like, "Yeah, my daughter will do it." All his life, right? This auto driver's vision was that one day my daughter would grow up and she would treat so many patients for free, right? All that dream gone in 1 second. Now, of course, if S. Anita's case was a very singular case, right? Um, like nothing happened after that, we wouldn't have seen her name in Wikipedia pages and all. S. Anita's case happens still now in Tamil Nadu and across India, definitely, right? It has other reasons. In Tamil Nadu, it's because of need. In in other regions, it could be because of not getting into the right academic institutions, right? Institutionalization pressure. But all of these are marks under the same name of society. It's the society in some way making you not reach your dream.
Wow, I actually, frankly, I did not know about this incident, but you spoke about it so passionately, and honestly, listening to it, it did bring tears to my eyes. I get really emotional when I listen to such stories of such talented lives that could do they could do wonders in this world. Them having to be compelled to give up their own life because of society. It's really saddening. And thank you so much for sharing this, because it's something that I didn't know, and I think it's a big eye opener and a good example as to why some people feel so compelled to take such a decision. I actually have heard of other suicide cases wherein I've heard of, like, so many talented people just, having to take such a decision, like the Bollywood actor Sushant Singh Rajput, who had also, I think, done a degree in engineering. But, like, it explains, listening to their story, it explains why they felt so compelled to do something like this. I'm not saying it's right to commit suicide in such a situation, but if you really try to understand the situation, you can't blame them. It's not appropriate to say that what they did was wrong either.
Okay, so in segment 2, we want to discuss a different aspect of suicide which isn't spoken. It's like the effect of suicide on the family and their coping with the situation.
Yeah, so according to me, like, the immediate effect, of course, will be grief, right? So a lot of people say that you should get over it and stuff, and of course it's not easy. But grief is actually a healthy method to get over to cope with the situation, because I've always believed this, that whatever emotions you get, right, you should embrace it. You shouldn't, like, try to run away from it. But the first and foremost thing is grief. Then sometimes there'll be anger, guilt, confusion. All of this is there. But what do you guys think? Like, of course, effect on the family is the worst. But what do you guys think are some of the ways in which they can cope with it and speak about that effect?
Yeah, so I guess it'll be a terrible experience that families will go through. Someone near dear would do such a thing, committing suicide. I think the person would find an easy way out, perhaps in their imagination by committing suicide, but those that are left behind will need to cope up with the loss. Many times it's not only about emotional loss. Many times it's these are real losses. Let's say a husband commits suicide, and the wife and has small kids, and the wife, left on their own. How would they get by? How would they manage their life? So it's not a straightforward thing. But I guess every person will in the family will need to get through with this on their own, and I don't think anybody would be able to there is no, you can't take inspiration from anyone else, you can't learn from anyone else this, how to cope with this. Your own self has to cope with this as an individual, and it all boils down to your character, your willpower, your deep rooted beliefs about life, about God, about many things. So many people are not able to take this, become alcoholics, become drug addicts. So many people will also try to follow the same path as their family member has chosen. So there are so many easy ways out people will try to find in this situation. But again, life cannot stop. Life has to carry on. Death is a part of life, inevitable part of life. As soon as we are born, being dead is a given. Nobody has so far been able to become immortal. Maybe in future somebody is able to devise a way of doing that, but not as of now, at least. So knowing that death will arrive one day, how can I go on with my life and do the best that I can, is probably the only way to stay stoic in this whole devastating process that you will go through if something like this happens to your family members. But then, yeah, I mean, you'll have to take your own inspiration, from your own self, and kind of rise above the situation. That's all I can say here.
Yeah, I take your thought into consideration, especially in the last point. It almost felt like you were talking like my appa. Right? That's my point. I was like, oh my gosh, that's my appa. Okay, definitely, sir. Definitely, it's very true. I think here I would like to talk about the second most suicide case in Tamil Nadu or in India. It's the farmer's case, right? Now, in the case of a farmer, right? What is a farmer doing, right? He's the most he is the breadwinner of these families, right? And the unfortunate thing about Indian farmers or a lot of other developing country farmers is that farmers aren't that rich, right? The natural association of when you look at them, when you look at a farmer is, oh, he's poor, he's working in a hut, and he's doing all these stuff, okay? But then who is he serving? He's serving all the riches in this world, right? These riches, they can't sustain without this farmer, right? But yet he gets to be in poor, he's in this cycle of poverty, but they just keep on rising. But the point is, when these farmers, right, and in Tamil Nadu, we've been having quite a lot of water issues, right? And on top of that, we're having a few government issues from the central, right? The central, I mean, it's pretty obvious to us, is that the central is not that lenient or that equal, I should say, to Tamil Nadu farmers, right? We've had protests on, Delhi, and even the case of Punjab actually protesting, right? Punjab protested at a larger scale, but we all the states say the same thing. We resonate the same message, that there's an issue with society, and farmers are been treated really bad. And when it comes to families, devastating effect, because you see these families who are already children malnourished, okay, and these mothers who barely need the daily expense, they need the daily money to actually sustain their lives, right? And they're at this brink where like the balancing, they would have to starve a few days, and they would have to some days they would go without food, and some days they would even compromise on celebrations. These are the families we're talking about. And when something like this happens, when a farmer or the main breadwinner dies, family loses. The most common thing that happens in Tamil Nadu is they really try, okay, and then the mother actually goes on this state where like she doesn't talk to anyone, right? She's in this room, she's locked, and she just you know starts tries to handle that her husband's gone, but then sometimes she can't, and she goes through psychotic traumas, right? And the children, well, they're just children. What do you think they're gonna do, right? They've been grown up. They grew up, through malnourishment, all this stuff, and on top of that, now they don't have any situations of food, or how they would even sustain education. And the sad thing that would happen is sometimes children would go for work, sometimes the mother would go for work, sometimes that work isn't pretty acceptable for society, which is pretty hard. Yeah, so definitely economically, the society, the family is really damaged. But if you notice this again, what we talked about, society causing it, right? Now, what happens to society? What happens when this farmer dies in the society? Does society care? No. I mean, farmer suicide is such a thing where like media doesn't care anymore. Media is like, oh, farmer suicide, yeah. But then tell me that a mass farmer suicide, right? That's again something that's been happening increasingly in India, where like 10 or 20 people suicide together, right? They think it's to raise awareness, but then it's, for media, it's just a public stunt, right? Yeah, we have 20 people suiciding. Okay, let's go there. Yeah, it's a huge case. Because media is at this point where like, yeah, farmer suicide, everything, that's just one, everyday thing. But then something more, right? Give me more. So society clearly doesn't care, right? And I think that's the painful part of it, right? The one that's causing the issue, right? Society. Now, if that society itself doesn't care about these farmers, and it's suicide or it's euthanasia, that's sad.
Okay, so now going to segment 3, we want to talk about the prevention and control of such suicides. As you said, as Ahilan said, suicides are not acceptable. So, and they are actually preventable. So there are a number of measures that we can take to like at least reduce and prevent suicide attempts. So what do you guys think are some of the things that we can do as a family or as friends for people around us to at least reduce the attempts?
Yeah, I guess this is a very, very important point, and I think every one of us is responsible in our own way to improve the mental health of our own selves as well as of others, because ultimately it's all about the strength of the mind. When you see a Wimbledon match, recently I saw Djokovic versus Nadal. Now that went into, I don't know, 5 sets, and it was going on and on and on. It was just the mental toughness that saw Djokovic win the match. So this is the toughness which comes from several factors. Now the first factor in this is being at peace with oneself. So that comes only from a lot of physical exercise as well as meditation, and a lot of what we call pranayam, which is the breathing exercises. So the whole thing has to start off with having a healthy body and having a healthy mind. This is the first step, I would feel. Second step is have a comfort zone built around oneself through families and friends, where people should be ready to accept you the way you are, not the way they would like you to be. So this, I mean, we may want someone else to be, like someone, but we need to have the maturity to accept them as they are. We may still want them to be someone else, but we need to show that maturity to accept them as they are. We should not, like, kind of force our opinions on others. So this is what I say, comfort zone. This is what I say, this is better done with friends than with the family. In family, it can be done better with siblings rather than parents or elders, because of the traditional respect that we believe we have to pay to them. So that's why this comfort circle works better with friends, peer groups, siblings. So normally one is not exposed to society in general, but we are more exposed to family and friends all the time, and peers. So if this circle can accept us, and if we can feel comfortable within the smaller circle, I think the large part of societal problems will get reduced. And then the most important thing is to keep working on yourself, keep improving everything that you do. And as I said, the most important thing is do what you like to do. Okay, even if you have to fight with society to do what you like to do, it's fine, because once you start doing what you like to do, there will be much lesser negative thoughts that one will get, because you will not be trying to beat someone else, because you enjoy what you do. So you won't have this feeling of trying to beat someone. The feeling would be to try to improve, try to better your own self, and that is a positive emotion. So the thing about emotions is that they have a multiplier effect, right? If there's a negative, if you have a negative circle of influence, circle of friends, this negativity will keep on multiplying, growing exponentially. The same is true for positivity also. So once you have positive emotions, positive feelings coming into you regularly, and your close circle of influence also disseminates those positive feelings, this also will have a cascading effect, and the small positive will become big positive, which will bigger positive. This is what we call the halo effect. So this is very critical. And ultimately it's all about knowing that this is a finite existence that we have on this planet, and we have to make the best use of it, and do whatever we want to do. Of course, not hurt others and do something which is wrong, because we won't feel happy after doing that in any way, right? Down in our hearts we know what is right, what is wrong, but whatever is right and whatever I love, if I do that, I believe this whole vicious circle can be stopped. That's my view. Over to you.
Yeah. Yeah, that's very correct of whatever you said. I want to emphasize on the second point that you said about your comfort zone with your family. I know for a lot of people, it may be with your friends, but I think it differs from person to person. But even if you have like one person who you can just vent out to, and you can just talk to very freely, be it your friends or your family, I think that's like enough, or that's at least the bare minimum that we should have. You should at least have one person who you can tell everything, be it like for me it's my mom or like Nivi, and you can like just share everything with, because just talking to someone really helps. And if you really don't have anyone, even seeing a therapist or something isn't wrong. So basically, there needs to be one person. There's something called suicidal ideation, which is like the thoughts of one wanting to die. And there's also something called suicidal behavior, which is when a person is focused on doing things that cause his or her death. So if you have one person who knows you really well, right, they'll probably be able to recognize or sense it within you and try to help you out. And if you are that one person for someone else, you should also be responsible in like helping that person or taking action for that person's betterment. Yeah, Ahilan, what do you have to say?
This is actually a very vital question. Um, and to be honest, the answer really varies, right? The majority of the answers we have online are, we say, is applicable for the top crisp of society, right? People who don't have an economical issue, right? People, these issues where, like, these suicides do not have a rippling effect on the family to an extent where the family's existence is in a question, right? And to be honest, according to what I saw and according to what statistics say, these cases are pretty low compared to the mass numbers of suicide that happened with economical consequences, right? And so yeah, these exercises, these telling them to exercise, telling them to get into a better shape, get into better health, even a therapist, right? These are applicable for like these top crisps, right? But then what happens to the majority of the people who are actually in poverty, right? What are the solutions for them? I mean, in fact, uh, the number one thing I want to talk about is enlightenment, or like knowledge, right? Let's take this podcast itself for an example. Okay, do we believe that this podcast would reach the bottomest part of the society, right? The developing part of the society? I mean, we hope, right? We all hope it would, but will it? We doubt, because you would need a phone, you would need an app, you would need the person should know to use this app, right? Now, would he spend his money on a phone, or would he spend his money on his next meal, right? Okay, so number one thing we need to do is we need to deliver these messages, these informations to every part of the society, right? Not just the top, not just the bottom, to every part of the society. All right, and we've seen information about how to develop the topmost, right? Yeah, exercises. And one thing I would say was actually get closer to the family, right? I think as we've been developing, we've been getting into this technological era, we've been detaching from humans at a huge scale, right? We're in this point where, like, we're more comfortable with a computer, right? Our hands communicate better with a computer than our mouth with our own parents, right? So it's a very shocking phase. So at this phase, I think it's really essential that we get closer to the family. Yes, there is a generation gap. Yes, they don't understand you, right? Yes, and sometimes they do, get on your nerve or whatever. But one thing I mean, yeah, I'm going to sound like a parent now, but one thing I want everyone to understand is they're your parents. They're not going to do anything that's, bad for you, right? I mean, sometimes they would do it, but that's only because they don't, they didn't know it, right? Whatever it is, they want your best, right? There are instances, I'm not going to say, yeah, your parents is going to be like, that ultimate knowledge where like they know exactly what they're doing. No, they're humans too. They make mistakes, right? And as a teenager, you should accept that they have mistakes, they have flaws, because once even they were a kid, right, they would only know what was taught to them, right? No one can actually know you better than yourself. So in a way, but their intention, right? That intention, we say intention matters, right? Their intention, they would never harm you. All right. Now coming to the important part, where like we discuss on the majority of these society, well, like how would we develop them? As we discuss its knowledge, we need to enlighten them about all these issues. And second thing is, I think we need to also enlighten the top crisp of the society a little, right? I think a lot of people assume that businessmen don't need the rest of the society, right? They're above all it. But then what I would say is, what is essential for any business, right? A customer. And who are these customers? That's the rest of the society, right? So I think these businesses should acknowledge that it's also their responsibility to maintain the customer's health, or their well-being. So I think it should be something that arises from every company, that they start supporting everyone, right? Maybe supporting education, or maybe like Elon Musk supporting an entire village, right? Adopting an entire village, and it's starting. It's definitely starting, and as an Indian or as a global citizen, I'm very proud that this is happening. But at the rate of suicides we have right now, not that much. So developing eco-social backgrounds, that's number one thing that should happen.
I definitely agree with you 110%. And I think you opened up a very different side of this conversation that I didn't think of earlier. But I'm so glad that you did, because it's something that really people need to hear. But yeah, I think that's about it for this episode. We really enjoyed talking to you both of y'all and learned a lot. I
Yeah.
hope this episode informs a lot more people about the issue. But thank you so much to both our wonderful guests. You guys were really, really nice to talk to. Thank you for your sharing of opinions. Before we end this episode, we also just wanted to mention that you'll find some free telephone counseling hotlines in the description box below, so y'all can have a look if needed.
Also, if you like this episode, please make sure to follow us here on Spotify and check out our Instagram page at the official GenGap for weekly interaction to be part of our third question segment.
Please show some love on our YouTube channel too. Thank you and have a wonderful day. Bye.